Okay, so good evening everyone. My name is Rhiannon McPhee and I'm a field officer working for Riverine Plains based in Mulwala, New South Wales. And my colleague Kate Coffey is joining me today. She'll be a co-host and she's also project officer for Riverine Plains. So I would like to welcome you all to this drought preparation webinar series. This is the final webinar in our 4-part series that is supported by the FRRR through funding from the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund. Just a quick disclaimer for everyone, we will be recording this webinar and posting it online after the event. And Riverine Plains would like to inform all attendees and viewers that opinions and thoughts expressed in this webinar reflect only the speaker's views and are not necessarily the views of Riverine Plains. The aim of this webinar is to gain a better understanding on how AgTech can be used to assist business decisions and potentially aid in on-farm drought preparation. Our speakers today are Hamish Munro from Pairtree and Fiona Lake, a drone expert. And I've already introduced you all to Kate Coffey. And also, whilst I've got your attention, if you do think of any questions throughout the webinar this evening, please post in the Q&A and Kate will facilitate some Q&A discussion after each speaker. Finally, at the end of the webinar, a survey will pop up on your Zoom account. And if you could take 5 minutes to complete that, it would be greatly appreciated. So first speaker, Hamish, let's see how you go.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rhiannon, and thanks, Kate, and good evening, all. Thank you for attendance. And yeah, I was really excited to be invited and to assist Riverine Plains within this last of your 4 your presentations. I think drought. You know, we've been lucky the last couple of years. We've sort of ended up with a really wet season, and you know, no doubt drought will come around. And as a 5th-generation farmer, I thought that it would tie in really well and just take you through what we do at Pairtree and why we do it. I'll just share our screen. Can you see that? So Pairtree is a universal dashboard, and ultimately what that means is that we can connect about 130 different AgTech companies from across the Australian and international AgTech space, but also digital ag information from, you know, weather, markets and things like that. So the next 10 minutes or so, we'll just walk through a number of options that we provide. So I'll just give you this little video firstly, just to give you a little bit of context of what Pairtree does.
My name's Hamish Munro. I'm the co-founder of Pairtree, the universal dashboard for smart farms. After 13 years of working on our family farm, I noticed that I was spending more time in the office than outside working with my daily operations. So we decided to build Pairtree, which allows all of the data to come onto a single platform, single login, so that we can actually make decisions about our livestock, our water, our pastures, our finances, and many other components that drive our business, like markets and satellite imagery. So having all of those things all on the one space really allows greater operational benefits, as well as also greater decision support and decision making. Pairtree. Think one, powered by many. Built by farmers, for farmers.
So the problem that we, I as a farmer, experience, and just talking to a lot of mates and things like that, is that at the moment we've got all of these different data sets that are growing day by day. We found that farmers were frustrated and overwhelmed and started to cringe if there was the mention of a new AgTech solution or a new data source that the farmers had to manage. So what we saw was that option wasn't there, and that farmers were frustrated. So I decided to create Pairtree, which through a number of contacts and also exposures within the industry, I could see a path to make it farmer friendly, but also make sure that, you know, it was also agnostic, so that because every farm is totally different, even though they could be neighbouring farms because of succession planning or financial or, you know, a number of different options. You know, every business has different budgets and therefore a range of you know, sort of expected or sort of platforms, software, ag tech that they use through sensors and things like that. So what does Pairtree do? It centralises data that is related in operation, but not yet physically connected. And so how we do that is through what's called an API. And essentially that is the plug between software platforms. So our job within Pairtree is really to be the glue within the ecosystem and to make it easier for farmers to connect their data, you know, and we're overcoming that interoperability or that issue of many farmers saying, why doesn't everything just talk to each other? We're slowly sort of overcoming that issue. This is a bit of an older slide, but it's, we're up to about 130 now, but you can just, hopefully you can see a couple of AgTech companies that you may use or may be familiar with. And so, as I said, being agnostic, we allow the farmers or the users to actually start their own journey wherever they like, with whether it's a tank sensor or a weather station or a satellite imagery or one of the apps, and start to connect other bits of information together that through the one solution may not be able to provide the overall oversight for your property, but through stacking that data, and we'll see some images shortly. That's how, you know, sort of we're tackling that issue. So to enable this, what we did was we created Pairtree Plus, which is your daily basics, and really Rhiannon has mentioned that, you know, today's focus is really on drought preparedness and looking at the daily basics for your farm, your weather, your satellite imagery, and your markets. Really are probably, as we see, the key fundamentals that you know, enable you to get a better grasp of where your business is from a drought perspective, but also then to actually stack other data sets on top. And so Pairtree Plus is really the first platform that can be a standalone, just the basics, but then also fully integrate any other data set that you want to build out a greater insight into your farm and sort of better management or production. So this is our homepage approach, and we've got a 7-day forecast, a bit of a synoptic chart, but the really interesting thing here is we have a 2-year rolling rainfall, accumulative rainfall. So we can see here for 20, you know, the rain was quite a bit lower than what the average was, whereas in 21 it was more than, and then for this screenshot, it's 21 is above average as well. We've got some little sort of widgets here that looking at FAO 56 and MACT, 2 different evapotranspirations versus rainfall. So you can also see whether you're adding or subtracting from the bucket each week, essentially, just to get a bit of an idea whether you're starting to dip into a bit more of a droughtier type period. Each farm, when we set a farm up, we create a virtual weather station. Barina's my old family farm at Cumnock. And so that virtual weather station is a 5 by 5K gridded interpolated data. So what that means is that BOM has looked and created data between Orange and Dubbo, and then creating as accurate as possible, you know, a interpolated or an estimate for that area, which includes topography and a number of other, you know, sort of long-term historical measurements. We have our historical weather page, which you can see here. We're looking at cumulative rainfall. So you can see over the last 10 years, you can see 2016 was way above, but then the following 3 years was way below. So that, you know, again, you can see here, and it's an interesting point, if anyone was sowing, you know, you would have been on an average year back in 2012, but, you know, that year would have went with you. But looking at a similar point in 2013, you know, make the same decision with the rainfall pattern about the same, but then the season was way below. So there's some interesting little facts here again here in 2017. It seems a bit of a crunch point for sort of the Cumnock area. That, you know, making a decision whether you commit to a full sowing program or purchasing some cattle over winter, maybe sort of there or thereabouts in that year to, you know, pull the trigger. But we also then have cumulative evaporation as well, so you can see where the years, how they perform, how far behind they were, temperature and a few things like that. Another thing that we do provide from the virtual weather station is a spray log, spray planning, so that sorry, not a spray log, a spray planning window. So we can see here for the next 12 hours where conditions will be fine, 24 hours and 48 hours, and down the bottom there's a 7-day forecast as well. So you can see when your windows for spraying will be right to spray or not, so that just to give you that little bit more assistance in trying to, you know, plan what direction the wind's going to be blowing from, and if you want to get contractors or spray plan for a few days spraying. The other part of Pairtree Plus is that we have the Sentinel satellite imagery geolocated to your farm, so that we can actually start to see water moisture index, which is essentially moisture within the crop. So you can see high canopy or water stress. So you can see these paddocks would have been sprayed out, but the other paddocks still had a lot of pasture in it and things like that. The SWIR, Shortwave Infrared, is different to the NDVI type view, but this one also shows green material, but is also probably, we use it more so for checking cloud, for cloud masking, to make sure that the other two are showing the right information. If you see cloud, then you need to sort of take it with a grain of salt, the imagery. And then finally the markets. So we've got a whole range of different livestock markets from MLA and from Auctions Plus. But then we also have some CBOT Chicago border trade, corn futures, soy and wheat futures, just to see where those markets are. And the idea of having the markets also included is just if you're seeing the dips in the historical weather, that you can then start to you know, just watch the markets and see where that intersect is of maximising your animals, you know, or your crops to when to lock you know, sort of, or sell produce to make sure that you don't get stuck selling a little bit later and when the market falls. Some currency as well, and then lastly, which is sort of really the foundation or the starting point to where you can then use the rest of the Pairtree intelligence services, is that this is the map. You can see here that we've got one red point, which is where the virtual weather station is, and what that does is sort of you can start building out with all of this navigation here to put more imagery on there like this, and you can compare different layers and things like that as well. So we can connect to data farming's EM surveys and put those on your farm, as well as PCD, plant cell density for cotton guys, or NDVI for, you know, just normal crop health, but then also pull in like the likes of JD and yield estimates as well, and then stack all those different layers with then soil probe data and a number of other bits and pieces. Pairtree is also the first Australian AgTech company to comply with the voluntary farm data code. That's being rewritten at the moment, but we fully rewrote all of our terms and conditions to make them aligned. So, you know, we always act in the best interest of the farmer, as a farmer myself, but you know, it's only with permission that we would share or use any data. We sell integrations, not information, and so that selling the information doesn't fit into our business model at all. And ultimately, we want to empower farmers to be able to better use their data by us being able to assist that through new integrations and new services on top of the Pairtree platform. So simplify your day and sync your farm. There's my contact details. I will be down in Yarrawonga at the end of next month for the Expo, and would love to catch up with anyone tonight, or anyone else that you think that should catch up with us and hopefully help you out. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Hamish. That was great to get a good rundown. Just quickly before I go to questions, we noticed a little bit of background noise. Just wanted to check there's nothing in your area.
Yeah, it's probably my fan on my computer, sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
All good, all good. So I have one question that's come through. With comparing history, so if you have previous yield maps, or if you've got rainfall data from a couple of years and you're sort of wanting to see what happened that season to what happened this season, is there a way you can do that with Pairtree?
Yeah, look, the yield maps can be all stacked. We have a geo server, so so we can actually add and save all those yield maps or other sort of satellite imagery or things like that, so that they can be grabbed reasonably easy and then stacked as they want. We have a rainfall override approach as well, where you can actually override the interpolated data with manual data. Unfortunately that's manual at the moment, but we are working and yeah, we'd love to work with people to just get a bit better understanding of where and how that data is, if it's in Excel spreadsheets or if it's just within, we've got 15 different weather station providers at the moment. So hopefully we can just pull it through those integrations.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll just throw over to Kate and see if she's got any questions for you now.
Yes, Hamish, just a quick question. If a farmer's got their own, you've got the virtual weather station, what if they had their own weather station and their own moisture probes? Would that link into the Pairtree?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so they're the integrations. So the likes of Goanna or AgBite or Metos or Wild Eye, or there's probably, as I said, there's 15 different weather station providers, and probably thereabouts about 8 or 10 soil probe providers that we can definitely integrate in. And so what we firstly do is, on that last map you saw with the red paddocks, there'll be little dots wherever those devices are, so you can click on them and have a look at that. But through our navigation as well, you just see that the actual dashboards, which then have a time picker that you can go back as far as the data we have to have a look at that and start to pick up some of those views.
And just another quick question, how are you finding the farmers that have adopted the Pairtree? Which part of the Pairtree are they finding the most beneficial in terms of farm management?
Yeah, so we there's a couple of like, I sat on cattle council for a number of years, and so my passion's probably the beef industry. Mostly, we're seeing that particularly a mix of Sevo Labs, FarmBot, maybe OptiWay, and then maybe one of your livestock management software products, sort of an AgriWeb or a Maya or a Mobile, sort of really come together quite nicely and sort of give a fairly end-to-end type sort of situation on the beef industry. We did a nice project with the Toowoomba Strait Basin Enterprise on a cotton property with some of the cropping for the different water dam levels, as well as satellite imagery and all that. So yeah, we've sort of got a fair bit of coverage on a number of different industries, and it's really our approach of being agnostic sort of makes it a choose your own adventure to a certain extent. So the dashboards and having everything in the one point is really interesting. Probably the other thing is that if there's if you've got 2 or 3 different weather station providers or tank providers that you want to see on the one page, that's something that we can do quite easily as well. So you can see a FarmBot next to an Observant or a Goanna, or any other number of tank providers that are there.
Okay, thanks very much, Hamish. So it sounds like you can integrate with a number of different providers, but there's also benefits for like whether you're beef or grains, and checking your dam level sounds quite handy. So we do have another question about OptiWay. Can you just give a bit more detail how OptiWay fits into the Pairtree?
Yeah, so what we've got a full integration with the OptiWay platform. So ultimately, what we can do is show you different sessions, so that and we've got a pivot table which you can sort of pick your actual session, and then you can see the EIDs or electric, like the NIS electric ID tags there. So then you can see the weights as numbers. But if the beauty of the pivot table is you can actually infill the cells with a as a graph, and so you can see the boxes and you actually see the growth of or the reduction of each animal, depending on whether they're going forwards or backwards. Then we also have access to the average daily gain and the other services that Bill's got with OptiWay.
Great. That's all the questions now. Thanks, Ree, for at the moment.
No worries, Kate. Thank you. And thanks, Hamish. Just before I close up, was there anything else you needed to cover that's come to mind?
No, at the moment, thank you. Just check out pairtree.co, and Pairtree's is a pair of shoes. That'd be great. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks, Hamish. So our second speaker today is Fiona Lake. She is an expert in drone photography as well as using drones in agriculture. Fiona, can you please give us a bit of background information on how you got the title of drone expert?
Well, I've been taking photos for a long time from the air for like nearly 30 years. And then a drone was produced that was good for what I do. So I bought it and I looked around for training, couldn't find any. It was all really bad, really, really bad, and mostly still is. And then I thought, well, I should put my money where my mouth is and see if I could do a better job. And of course, what I do isn't perfect, but it is unique. There still isn't anybody running workshops quite like what I'm doing. And I thought it would have a 2-year lifespan, but it's gone on. And I've realized that new technology often takes a long time to work right through for everyone. There'll be the early adopters, and then there's right through the tail enders. It can take years. Smartphones and computers, it obviously took years actually for people to take it up. So, and I cover things that are virtually not covered at all by others in training. So, yeah.
Thanks. So yeah, if you wanted to continue on a little bit about how drones can assist farmers with their operation, that'd be great.
Yes, so I'll go to can you all see that presentation? Good-o. So, I wonder if arrows will work. Oh, I didn't test this. Sorry, I'm just looking how to send it on. I don't know how to get onto the next page.
Does your space bar work?
Ah, righto. Arrows, space bar. Beautiful.
No
you can
worries.
see, I'm a tech expert. Anyway, here we are. So just a really quick intro. I do roam around a bit. The top left is where I grew up on the Murray River, near Moama, on a family farm. And the top right is where I live now. I'm actually about 60 k's to the south in the tropics in North Queensland. And I go to a whole range of different places, and it actually helps me run workshops because I see different industries in different regions, and people will be doing different things siloed. And so I'm a connector of different ideas that come out of different industries and different people. That's tea on the Atherton tableland on the left, and it really is that colour, green. And that's a station in northern South Australia on the bottom right, because I go to some really arid areas as well as really high rainfall areas. And you can get ideas from, going and seeing different. And that's some of the workshops I've run. And now I've got a thermal drone. The top left is looking at a thermal drone at a workshop at Barham earlier this year. So yes, a few of the things I wanted to run through. What's the other worst thing about drought? Because we all know what the obvious thing is. Too much stress and worry and making decisions under pressure. I really hate making decisions under pressure. I know I'm really, really bad at it. So the key is to make the decisions and do as much as you can before an event happens. There's 100 reasons why, most of they're obvious, but one is mental health. And that's actually come to me via comments people make at workshops. It wasn't something I thought of early on. And the best thing about drones, that's two of the drones I've got. That's a thermal drone on the left-hand side and just the old Phantom on the right-hand side. It's finding problems early and quantifying them and then addressing them early on. That is the single best advantage of drones, finding a problem early that you didn't know you had or you didn't realise the extent of it. And that picture there, that's actually the Borefield Road from Roxby Downs running north, and that patch of green there is actually one of the many leaks out of that pipeline, which they're repairing, but possibly not quickly enough. Just don't tell anyone I said that. It's great artesian basin water that's leaking. Yeah, so drones really can help manage resources, time and energy. And energy, I think, is something that's kind of underrated for any small business owner, anybody who's self-motivated. You can pay people to do things. Money is often discussed, but your energy to keep going is really the thing that's priceless. You can't go and buy it. You can't run your own well dry. So it's before and during drought. Stitch in time management is what I call it. So some of the simple things, and these might sound obvious, but the reason why I go through these is because usually there are things that other people haven't thought of. Looking for leaks is a major benefit, and these things I particularly picked here, things that can relate to water use. In irrigation efficiency, all kinds of irrigation and all kinds of issues that you could have. Runoff patterns after rain, adjusting contour banks and catchment walls, things like that. And as soon as the rain shower stopped, you put your drone up, you take a video of where your water's running if you've got a slope. You don't assess it from the air, you take a video and then you play it back on your computer and you can have a really good look at where the water is actually running. To see adjustments you have to make. Really, really simple uses. But that's, to me, where many of the benefits are in drones. They don't have to be fancy uses. Down the bottom, water stressed plants, nutrition and weeds and chemical resistant plants. We need machine learning to really improve, which is too long a topic to go into. Now, that's one of the things I'll be talking about more at the forum next month. So really quick irrigation checks. You know, from the ground, you'll see, you'll go, oh, it's a bit dry over there, whatever. It's not until you put a drone up and get an aerial view. It's so simple because we're all visual creatures. We like to actually have a look at what it is, an overview. Things like this. So our mate on the tractor would be able to see these spots that are too high. But it's not until you put the drone up and actually look down on it. And obviously you just don't go and take a bodgy photo and then go and do the work. Something like this, you obviously map it properly and go and do it. So often the drone you'll use to find the problem. You won't necessarily use it to fix the problem, and you'll go and ground truth it, and you might have to survey it or map it properly if it's something like this. It's just drone, simple, find it. Thermal drones is something I talk a bit about in workshops. So I talk about them for about an hour because they're underutilised and the quality is much better now. The price is coming down and they're quite new, really, in the field of agriculture. And actually thermal camera use will really pick up in the health sphere too over the next few years. So there's a whole range of things, red, green, blue on the left-hand side, which is what we see with our eyes. And you can see there's a gully running down the middle, and this is very damp. So it's showing up as cooler here on the thermal image. The red is hotter, a hotter temperature. So it shows problems, relationships between things, patterns and scale that you won't see from the ground. And again, as I said, finding a problem early can't be beaten. That's in the Southern Riverina, 2003. That was actually taken from a helicopter, though I cheated there. Yeah, so one of the things I like to remind people, nobody knows your own place or your own business like you do. I've often thought myself, oh, I'd love to be able to get someone just to come and do this or that, or give me an answer. I've got a decision to make, you know. But we all know if you've got your own business, nobody else knows all the ins and outs of it like you do. So one of the things I recommend is if someone does have a drone, to put it up regularly, take photos, try and do it at the same time of day, from the same angle and in the same weather, hopefully with the sun out. And it will really help build a more three-dimensional picture of what you see on the ground and how it will look from the air. Simple things like that. And bearing in mind too, from the ground, you know, if you go to Ireland and you look at the grass, it's so thick. I can't believe, you know, you can never see what colour the dirt is. And you come to Australia and you look overhead at our grass, and usually you can see, certainly in the top half of Australia, you always see a good bit of soil as well. It will show all your flaws. So you might think things are looking really good on the ground. You put a drone up, find they're not so good. These things don't necessarily relate just to drought. I do run a session on managing livestock with drones because if people haven't had any experience aerial mustering, I realise it's a whole different way of managing stock, and some of the principles are the same, but you've got to be very careful not to teach stock bad habits. Kids, I do also talk about the multiple benefits for kids. One of the things, you know, when things are tough, kids will know parents are stressed. If they've got little jobs they can do to help, it actually really makes them, builds confidence and really makes them feel like they're contributing. And there are people with drones. I think this is really underutilised though. The benefits are huge and not enough kids are being introduced to drones. And there's so many benefits. I won't go through them all now, but there's a stack. So the best advanced drone users, there's two. One is mapping and the other one is spot spraying. And there's now some people doing swarm spraying. There's only one that I know with a license, but there might be more. That's flying more than one drone at once, spray drone at once. Mapping is, people do simple mapping. You've got to be very careful though. It's one of those things you want to do a proper job if you're going to be making expensive decisions. And yeah, ground control stations and it's a whole topic in itself. So the simple uses, as I said, are undersold. So I recommend people get a small, cheap drone, really easy to carry. You can stick it in a bag on a motorbike, whatever. Do check the safety and rules before you buy one in case you're too close to a prison farm, for example, in which case you won't be able to fly your drone because, you know, prisoners caught on pretty quickly that you could fly stuff and get it dropped over the wall. It's obvious when you think about it, but you know drones are allowed to be flying near prisons. That has actually caught a few people out, believe it or not. A few farmers gone and bought a drone and then discovered that, oops, I can't fly it because of the prison farm nearby. The complex uses are really oversold. So DIY, sophisticated uses for drones, most people really are not going to do flash mapping and they're not going to do spraying. It's a lot of gear and a lot of tech and a lot of learning and staffing around to get there. At the moment, the service providers with ag background are really scarce. We need more. There's huge business opportunities. At the moment, these jobs are being done by people visiting who don't know Frisian from a Brahmin, etc., you know, wheat from rice, whatever. It's very bodgy. So we need more people in ag to take up these opportunities and provide services for people. Another thing I bang on about at great length is only using drones and robots for what they're best for. You know, there's a lot of other ag tech out there, and I do talk about this in a fair bit of detail. Just going to the next one. Satellite mapping, which is, of course, something Hamish touched on. He had some very interesting slides there, mapping related. And water telemetry, as we mentioned, for example, FarmBot. There's a stack of companies. FarmBot is the one I hear really, really good things about as I trot around doing these workshops. And Optiway, the scales. So I find people buying drones to do bore runs, really bad use. And a number of other things to check fences and that kind of thing. And really running a drone along a fence to check the wires is not a good use either. The most exciting ag tech we've got, I think, on the market is actually smart tags. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how they further develop over the next few years. So, and of course, ground robots. This is Swarm Farm up near Emerald, and they can't keep up with their orders at the moment, finally, and made by farmers for farmers. It's a great example, and they've won national and international awards for good reason. And steam and laser treatment for weeds will be coming. So this is an example of something I talk about. Don't put something in the air if something on the ground can do it more safely, easily. You know, there's multiple reasons why a ground robot is better than an aerial one. You only put it in the air if you cannot do it any other way. Lastly, nobody has spare time. So it's really got to be worthwhile. No small business owner, and so many people selling tech and drones. Oh, just go and do this, don't do that. Who has the time? You know, it's really got to be worthwhile and not give you more headaches than it solves. So listing the problems that you've got and estimating the cost to yourself. Again, sounds simple, but a lot of people have gone out and bought the tech and then looked for the problem to solve. Which is, of course, not the way to do it. It is hard to find objective sources of information. If you go looking for drones, you'll find service providers and you'll find people who sell drones, and obviously they've got a vested interest. So it can be hard finding objective information. So many people have been sold drones to do bore runs, and they are so not suited for that. Thousands and thousands. Actually, wouldn't be an exaggeration to say there would be more than $100,000 easily wasted by people buying drones to do bore runs, and they're just not cut out for it. Knowing yourself, will you really do it yourself? Will you get around to, you know, if you buy a spray drone, are you really going to keep up and go and relearn what you have to learn every few months or whatever when you have to spray? Or are you not going to do that? A lot of people bought them and then they end up being paperweights. So, and if you're engaging a service provider to do this kind of work, you've got to assess them really carefully. And just to explain why I included this, it's my pet python here. And the possum is here. This is like a farming industry. And this is like the drone sellers in cities. The possum did escape. But the possum does get lucky every now and then and catches one of these. The python catches one of the possums. Yeah, so as I said, there's lots of opportunities for jobs at the moment. The last couple of slides. Nifty use for a drone. This was actually in the Darling Downs last year. They were harvesting. There was weather forecast. This is actually a waterway here. I should have put my thermal drone up, but I was low on battery. But you can see where they've just done it by guesswork, gone around here and turned, because if they'd gone further here, they'd bog. If you've got a thermal drone, that would map that really, really well for you and show you where it's too wet to go. And you can see here's another example, simple use. You can see they're harvesting again because wet weather was forecast. They're going hammer and tongs, and you've got some wetter areas in here. being able to map, you just stick your little drone up and have a quick look. It's so much better than having to drive around and look on the ground. So that's just some of the other things I run through in workshops, and I'll be touching on them at the Do next month. Yes, so I've just got, yeah, my website here, or if you just Google Fiona Lake, you will find me online. Yes. So that's it.
Thanks, Fiona. That was very, very informative, and I liked that you included some of those do's and don'ts with drones, because as you said, a lot of people get quite excited when they've got a new toy and want to do multiple things. And I can imagine something like battery life could, you know, hinder certain things like a bore run or something where the drone's traveling quite far and you might not be able to see it. So I'd be curious from your perspective with, you know, the rules and regulations and obviously battery life and being able to see the drone, is there any sort of more you'd like to add on with what could hinder or what you've really got to make sure before you make that purchase?
Well, yeah, for checking waters, I just say no. I mean, if someone is checking floodgates or a creek crossing or something, that's a fantastic use for a drone, because you go as close as you can and you just fly the drone and have a look. But for bore runs and whatnot, no, that's why I recommend getting a telemetry system. It's just so much better. And as someone said to me up here a few years ago, because I stand up in a workshop and I say, oh, has anyone got, you know, any kind of water telemetry? She said, oh, yes, it's so good, because we went to Parish, she said, and I could just look up and I could see that all the water was good, and then she could relax again. You know, drones are so hands-on. They're not automated, and realistically they won't be. I can't envisage them, you know, for years, if ever, for safety reasons. So they're very hands-on, whereas all these other systems set and forget. You know, even the ground robots, you program them and off it goes and does its job. You don't have to stand there watching it, whereas with the drone, of course, you do. And safety is the thing, and people mistakenly think sometimes that, oh, we're out in the bush, there's no aircraft. Well, the problem is that aircraft fly lower in the bush than they do over urban areas, because the minimum in cities is 1,000, over cities is 1,000 feet. In the bush, it's 500 feet. But in reality, crop dusters, gyrocopters, ultralights, mustering helicopters, there's a stack of aircraft that fly lower than 500 feet, right where drones typically fly. So it's really safety is kind of the number one thing. And while the risk might be low, the result could be catastrophic if you hit an aircraft. I mean, an R-22 helicopter, a set of crescent fencing pliers can bring down an R-22 helicopter. So a small drone, if it hits the rotor, yeah, you know, you could bring it down and kill the people on board. Mm.
Thanks, Fiona. It's good to understand the serious side of something that can be so novel. Kate, I'll just throw to you now for any questions.
Yeah, we do have one, Fiona, from the audience. So what's the risk of interference from birds?
Yeah, that's a good question. Eagles, wedge-tailed eagles, if you're flying around a wedge-tailed eagle, don't, you just land, because they're notorious for actually just taking out drones, and they can be so quick, really fast, and they're amazing. You know, you look around before you put the drone up, nothing, and they'll be there within minutes, circling. Other birds, really only during nesting season. And so if you're flying along a river, for example, you might get a lot of hawks nesting there. So in spring, or, you know, whenever you've had a bit of a good season, don't fly ever near nests. But mostly you won't have any trouble with birds. They'll come and have a look and go away. Plovers, mudlarks, there are birds that, you know, will bother you on the ground. They're the same ones that can torment a drone a bit, but usually they won't be much of a problem. You just fly away from them, but except for wedge-tailed eagles. Mm.
So it sounds like the wedge-tail eagles are the ones to watch out for, and they're pretty big. So
yes, they're fearless because they're the top of the food chain in the bird world. So they're not afraid of anything. Yeah. A mining company in Western Australia a few years ago actually lost 3 drones. It cost them more than $100,000. It was Wedgetail Eagles. I think they were kind of slow learners, because if you lost one $30,000 drone, you'd think twice. But yeah, they did it 3 times. So
Right.
I don't know, maybe they kept going after that. But yeah, money to burn, obviously.
Right. Thanks, Fiona. That's interesting. So the other one was, can thermal image processing be done easily by a novice?
Well, it depends on what kind of processing you want. But if you're doing mapping, there are 2 really good mapping programs generally for RGB as well, Drone Deploy and Pix4D. And Pix4D seems to be the popular one now. Drone Deploy was the original one. And I'm not sure whether you can still download a free version of Drone Deploy. You used to be able to go and give it a trial. And very, very easy. They've got lots of videos on how to do it. Yeah, and Drone Deploy is an American company, and most American companies are really, really good at service. Customers are everything. So they're good at explaining, they're good at helping if you've got a problem. With thermal images, I don't actually do mapping with my thermal drone. I just go and take photos, to be honest, because I don't own land, so I'm not up there taking maps on my own property. And the DJI software is known to be a bit bodgy for processing the thermal images.
So it sounds like if people are looking into that processing, to get in touch with the Drone Deploy software.
Yeah, or Pix4D. I'd have a look at both of them. Pix4D is a European company, and some people over the last year or 2 have swapped and actually prefer it. But it's a bit like Holdens and Fords, or, you know, whatever. Someone like this, someone like that.
So with the thermal processing, so you're seeing heat. What would be a practical application for that on farm?
Yeah, there's 1,001 practical thing. Yeah, well, depending on what industry and where you are is what I'm thinking. I mean, finding feral animals, finding stock. One of the reasons why I bought this drone was actually someone asked me. I ran a workshop at Hebel, and someone from Collar Enterprise said, mustering with sheep is such a pain, because he's using a drone to muster them. The sheep was the same colour as the ground, really hard to see. So thermal can be really useful for that kind of thing. But thermal, it's important to remember. The other day, someone asked someone I know about this, can you see, under the trees? And they said, yes. Well, actually, no, thermal cannot see through trees. It cannot see through objects. But you'll see glimpses, as if you've got something walking between trees, you'll see the thermal image of them between trees. And as the example I showed back there, where there was a gully running through a horticulture crop, it's actually a crop of capsicums, and you can see where the ground is damp with the ordinary image, but when you put the thermal image up, it actually shows you the difference in ground temperature, because finding wet ground near dry ground is excellent with a thermal drone. Yeah, particularly, you go out early in the morning when you might have the biggest temperature difference between wet ground and dry ground, or, depending on the time of year and the climate. There will be a particular time of day where because you need contrast. That's what you need for the thermal to work.
So I'm just thinking, Fiona, we've had a lot of problems with slugs down our way this year. Maybe that's a potential application to see which parts of the paddocks are a bit wetter in that early morning drone image with the thermal potentially.
Yeah, well, you'd probably have to wait until the dews, dissipated, because otherwise, you'll be seeing the dew on the plants.
Okay.
So you'd probably be doing it after lunchtime or whatever.
Yeah.
And it would definitely show you. It definitely should show you, particularly when you've got, a nice cool temperature overnight, and then it's warming up a bit. So if it's cold overnight and cold during the day, if you're not getting much temperature difference, then the damp ground will be a similar temperature probably to your dry ground.
Yeah. So you need that change in temperature between the night and day.
Yeah, you need the bigger the difference, the clearer the image you'll get. And the thing is too, I mean, and a hot tip is, if anyone's ever paying somebody to produce thermal images, you should make sure that they've done at least a Cert 1 in thermography, because the US has a particular problem with this now, because they're a bit ahead in this department. There's a lot more people using thermal drones and they have no training. And reflectance and emissivity is something people really need to understand, how to get accurate images. So, and that's a whole other topic. But if you don't understand that, you'll be producing images that could be giving you a misleading impression. Now, so if you're just putting the drone up and you just want a rough idea, that's no problem. But if you're going to make an expensive decision based on what you're looking at, that's when it's an issue. And same as mapping, you need to use ground control points. You need to be very precise, or the map you produced for your variable rate fertilizer or whatever is going to be really inaccurate. So it's one of those things. There have been a lot of people who've got just enough info to be dangerous in a way. And I would have thought that would have improved by now, but there's still a fair way to go. Yeah, and it's a matter of educating and going, if you're not doing these things, the information you're getting is not accurate, and that's kind of worse than no information at all.
So is that the certificate 1 in thermography? Is that just for interpreting the thermal images, or is that for drones in general?
It's not for drones. Unfortunately, there's no one in Australia who runs thermography for drones, and I think there's only one person in the US. I'd actually like to go over there and do it. And it's actually an American franchise company that I studied through to do it here, but it's how to produce images. And you'll be with a very interesting mob of people, because mostly they're electricians. They get the odd mechanic, and they get a lot of people in the mining industry. And so thermal cameras, like on the ground, have great potential for example, before harvesting, we know what happens. You know, you get your harvester out and you check it all over, and you might crank it up and everything seems good. And then, you know, harvest is ready to go. Bam, you get into it. And then, of course, it breaks down. Thermal cameras are excellent for finding bits that are wearing out because they overheat, bearings, etc. So, yeah, getting a thermal camera, you know, when people think of the cost of a delayed harvest, thermal cameras aren't cheap. A good one will cost you probably at least $10,000. But if you've got a very valuable harvest and you've only got a fairly narrow window when you can get it off, or at least, you know, go shares in one with your neighbours and lap it around and, you know, check over the gear with a thermal camera, run your machine for a while and then check it over and find bits that are about to go on you. So again, it's a matter of quantifying the cost. And then some of this gear can actually look cheap when you figure out how much money it can actually save you or stop you losing. Because people, oh, you know, it's a lot of money. Yeah, it is. But, you know, we all know, especially at the moment with parts being difficult to get, everyone's worst nightmare obviously is a breakdown of any kind at the moment, because next minute you find the part will take weeks or even months to get. So yeah, being prepared in advance is even more important now than ever.
Thanks, Fiona. That's absolutely fascinating. And I think a few people would be switched on to having those problems at harvest and trying to prevent them. So I think that's a huge opportunity. So I'll pass back to Rhiannon now, because I think she's got a couple more things to cover.
Thanks, Kate. Yes, before we wrap up today's session, I just quickly wanted to share a website with all of the attendees today. This website is called AgTech Finder, which is just www.agtechfinder.com. So I'll just quickly share my screen so you can see it. So basically, can you see that, Kate? Sorry. Is it there?
No, I can't see it,
No.
Ray.
Sorry.
Just try sharing your screen. That's better.
Better? Perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, that's it.
So this website is a really good website if you've got a problem and you want to know if there's a technology out there that can solve that problem. So a simple way to start is to click in the Find AgTech Products, and you can choose whatever sector you're in, or you can choose a focused area. So for example, if I chose whole farm management as a focus area, and then if the solution I was potentially looking at finding could be in crop forecasting, you can scroll down and there's quite a few different tools that are out there. And again, this isn't giving us opinions or anything like that. It's purely just showing what's out there at the moment. So SIBO Labs, for example, is something that was mentioned today, and you can have a look in here, see a little bit of information about what that program is, and if it was something that you might want to look at further, you can look at the contact details and go straight to the website from there. So I just think it's a really interesting tool. If you've got a specific problem, you can find it potentially in a website like this, or if you might have heard someone mention a company but you're just not sure, you could look in the company directory and have a look and go, oh yeah, that's right, it was Terra or it was Optiway, and this could be a little bit of a trigger point for you to see what tool that someone was talking about but you just couldn't remember, and then from there you could click in, find a little bit more and go, yes, that's what it was, and here's Bill's contact details if you need to give him a call and ask some more questions. So I just thought today would be a good chance to show everyone what that tool was, and yeah, just I thought, yeah, why not share that with everyone who's on today. Anyway, so thanks for the input to my speakers, both Hamish and Fiona, and Kate for your time as well. It's been a really, really great evening, and I am conscious of time, so I will sort of wrap us up there. I did want to just give a quick summary of some of the things we spoke about today. With one of the biggest things that came to my mind was making things easier. So in times of drought, when we're a little bit stressed and there's quite a few things on our mind, if we planned before the drought to make something easier during the drought, it's going to be a lot more beneficial for us. So as Hamish's program Pairtree, it sort of combines everything into that one place to make it easier for you. Instead of opening 30 different apps, you're just opening the one. And as Fiona was saying with the drones, you want to find a simple problem that's going to make it easier for you rather than creating more problems by purchasing something like that. So it's important that you're looking at what your problem is first rather than doing something that's potentially creating more problems and then potentially you're spending more time on it. And as she said, we don't have that much time at the moment. So I thought that was a really good thing that Fiona brought up with us. I'll just stop that. And I also wanted to sort of conclude, I suppose this is our final webinar for our 4-part drought preparation series. So thanks everyone for joining us on this journey, our first webinar series together, which has been really exciting and really successful. And this recording will be posted in the coming weeks. And before I finished today, I just wanted to introduce that our Innovation Expo is on next month, as both Hamish and Fiona mentioned, and they will be there in person. And it's from the 27th to the 29th of July. It's a Wednesday to Friday. We've got quite a few different events on, from a farm tour to our actual conference and our field expo, as well as a conference dinner. So there's quite a few different events you can attend, with our focus being AgTech and innovation. So if this webinar was something of interest to you and you want to learn a little bit more, we'd love to see you there. You can head to our social media to find out some more information, and there will be a discount for all of our Riverine Plains members. So yes, thanks everyone, and that concludes our webinar this evening.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.